Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, for all the stories that have been written about divisions in this council, and there are many real divisions, I believe most of us share many of the same goals. First and foremost, we want to see an immediate and sustained ceasefire as part of a deal that leads to the release of all hostages being held by Hamas and other groups, and that will allow much more life-saving humanitarian aid to get into Gaza. Of course, we can't just want that to happen. We have to make that happen. We have to do the hard work of diplomacy. I know you've heard me say that a lot, and that's because it's the truth. A Security Council resolution means much less if it is not actually made real on the ground. That's why the United States, Egypt, and Qatar are working around the clock in the region to secure an immediate and sustained ceasefire as part of a deal that leads to the release of all hostages being held by Hamas and other groups that will help us address the dire humanitarian crisis in Gaza. We believe we're close. We're not there yet, unfortunately. And this moment is one where the Security Council has a critical role to play. By adopting the resolution before us, we can put pressure on Hamas to accept the deal on the table. Colleagues, you don't need me to tell you that every day without a deal, meaning every day without a ceasefire, leads to more needless suffering. For more than 100 hostages, including a 1-year-old child being held in captivity by Hamas and other groups, for innocent Palestinians in Gaza who have been displaced, who are starving, who desperately need peace. For Israelis who have continued to face missile attacks from Hamas, a terrorist group that set this conflict into motion on October 7th. Every day without a deal means more needless suffering. This resolution will move us closer to securing that deal and help us alleviate that suffering. And I urge all council members to vote yes, to vote for a resolution that at long last condemns Hamas for its horrific terrorist attacks and sexual violence, that makes clear that all civilians, Palestinians and Israelis, should be able to live without fear of violence, that demands the protection of civilians in Gaza, and stresses that a major ground offensive in Rafah poses a grave threat to civilians, even as we still work toward eliminating Hamas from all parts of Gaza. That calls on Israel to eliminate all barriers and restrictions to humanitarian aid, especially as the threat of famine looms large in northern Gaza. That condemns calls to resettle Gaza and makes clear that the Palestinian Authority should have ultimate authority over Gaza, and that reiterates this Council's support for a two-state solution. This is a strong resolution. It's the byproduct of exhaustive, inclusive negotiations. It reflects the consensus of this Council, and it does more than just call for a ceasefire. It helps to make a ceasefire possible. It would be a historic mistake for the Council to not adopt this text, and I again urge all Council members to vote yes. Thank you, Mr. President.
I shall put the draft resolution to the vote now. Will those in favor of the draft resolution contained in document S/2024/239 please raise their hand. Those against. Abstention. The result of the voting is as follows: 11 votes in favor, 3 votes against, 1 abstention. The draft resolution has not been adopted owing to the negative vote of a permanent member of the Council.